Foundry's 7 specialized facilities enable researchers to create and study things at the nanoscale. The Foundry helps democratize science by giving anyone with a good idea access to world-class tools for working at the smallest scales.
I think a very good start, if you think about submitting a Foundry proposal, is really having a conversation. And you can contact basically any staff as closely related as what you plan to do, and you will find this information on our website, or you heard about it on a conference, so this could be also a good connection point. And just call them up and talk to them, because even if you have your idea and research plans set, this can help you actually to refine it or maybe add additional aspects to that research question, because you didn't know, or it is not as specified or detailed on the instrument website of the Foundry what we can do, but it can easily come up in a conversation. If you explain what you want to do, and then we will ask questions into certain directions, have you thought of this? Because we know, of course, better what we have. So we could add additional like angles or perspectives to your research project and basically shape the idea more. So it makes sense to get into conversation before you start the writing, because this conversation can change your idea a little bit or shape it more or make it more concrete, which is very helpful for the reviewers.
Reach out to staff first and talk to them to make sure that your proposal is kind of in line and is a good fit, or the right scope. So sometimes proposals come in and you can tell that they have not looked at the repertoire of the staff or talked to the staff at all, and those need a lot of adjustment. So yeah.
So each staff member has a profile with our main capabilities listed on the Foundry website. There's also a list of recent publications that's also kept up to date, both those that have been led by Foundry staff members and also those in collaboration with users. So there's a lot of resources that are already out there. And then if you identify maybe 1 or 2 staff members that you think overlap with your interests, then that's the stage to reach out to the staff member and see if they have the skills and capabilities to work with you on your project.
So just don't request everything. Then only have 2 people will do everything. That sounds very not realistic. So just talk to staff and to understand what the instrument can do and what we can do. And usually I prefer just write down very clearly, like it's a weekly batch or it's a monthly batch, or even we only use 1 time a year, something like that.
Also, oftentimes for a lot of people that want to work with nanofab facility, they actually kind of don't have a huge expertise in nanofab, and they want to use Foundry to kind of leverage the nanofab part to enable their project. So for these type of things, I find this being extremely useful to talk to staff members. So we will have meetings with staff member. We think that would help us then discuss what the possible nanofabrication workflow we can implement to make things possible.
And I have had a really good experience talking to staff beforehand and getting feedback on my proposals. Everything from if I want to do a certain type of measurement, making sure I'm specifying the right instrument and right microscope in the proposal and not making a mistake that way, to getting really good feedback about how to tune my scientific questions and goals. So I would really recommend talking to the scientists as well.
So if you haven't really contacted the staff members to help you in the construction of your proposal, then you don't have the context necessary, especially for some of the equipment we have. It's one of a kind in the world. You're applying to use the Foundry because there isn't another one. We have the one, and making projections about how to use the only thing that exists without talking to the person that designs and operates it, you won't write a proposal that actually has all the information that you need until you reach out and converse with them.
We need to know exactly what you're doing. What are you going to make? How do you plan to make it? On what scale do you plan to make it? Are there any hazards associated with it?
The Molecular Foundry website is really great. And if you're totally new to the Foundry, that's a really good place for you to just read about the different expertise and instrumentation that's available at the Foundry, and that could be kind of a good starting point to figure out the best points of contact for your particular project.
The advice I got, I was a user before, and the advice I got from staff whenever I reached out, that it's easier for them if you break down your email when you're contacting into something like what specific you are doing, or what instruments you need, how much time, all those what you go in the proposal can also go in the email to the staff, because that helps them reply better.
So when I say be specific, we look for things like numbers of samples, estimates for how much time you're going to be needing on this instrument or that instrument. If we see something where they say, yeah, I'm going to test, screen all these, peptide components, and they give a very vague number, to us that could be like, is that 1,000 peptide components or is it 3, right? And so that makes a huge difference in how we look at a proposal. So
being specific, certainly having a plan. What materials will you look at? What specific techniques do you intend to use? But sort of related to that, what actual piece of material science information are you after? Because sometimes you may be asking for a particular technique, but there might be a better way to do it. And if the review board can understand like what piece of information you're after, as experts in the field, they can also help assess, even if you didn't ask for this particular technique, we can maybe still do it, and that can work out.
Specificity in the timeline is very important as well. We really consider, can the research be carried out within a 1-year window? And we look to see exactly what parts are being performed at the Foundry versus what parts are being performed at the Home Institute. And then we also look to see what are the researchers going to do, once the year is over, what they're going to do at their home institution.
Reading my advisor's proposals was like the best way for me to understand what we were doing in our group. So I would say like you can kind of think like you're writing to like a first or second year grad student level. And I think that'll be a good amount of technical background. So yeah.
Including images in your proposal is very helpful, especially for the various characterization facilities. Is if you can demonstrate that you're competent enough in characterization to get such and such an image, then that lets the PRB very quickly assess the level of training that may or may not be needed.
Scientific figures, I usually like to include a figure in like the plan section as well. That's kind of like a diagram that shows like a flow chart of like what I'm going to do when, and like make clear what I want to do at the Foundry, and like what I'm going to be doing to complement that at my home institution.
And the extent to which you can maybe identify who that point person might be for your proposal in advance of your submission might actually help you kind of frame your proposal in a way that makes that connection point solidify in a way that helps us establish that your proposal could have a really good home year, and we could support you in achieving your goals.
Also, what the PRB really looks for is a clear scope of work, and that work can be doable. We also do look for stuff that benefits the Foundry in terms of expertise. So if the work can have an impact on the Foundry in a positive way, that it works synergistically with the research interests of the staff, that also carries a lot of weight too.
Taking advantage of unique features of the facility. So if you're looking to do sort of very low-end screening work of lots and lots of samples, that's a capability that many universities and other places may have in low-end instrumentation. And so if that's the only goal of your proposal, then the justification that the PRB sees may not be quite as high for it, unless you're coming from a place that doesn't have any of those resources. And so that is taken into account, certainly.
For the proposal, also just to get some feedback from the staff, just to learn like what we can improve, or even to learn like sometimes like we have different idea from the earlier year, or we have so many ideas we want to do, just to know like we want separate in different proposal, or just to focus on one project Foundry. That's also important, I think. Yeah.
And then the second biggest piece of advice that I can give to anybody, any of the users that are going to be submitting, not only is it worthwhile for you to run it by us just to get a sense of whether it's aligned to mission and well written and comprehensible. The other thing is run it by the other members of your group. Like the most common reason that we see a proposal that just doesn't make it across the line, it's just suffering from written in a vacuum without any feedback from anyone. And I've written a lot of proposals, and I can guarantee that the things that I write are improved by the feedback from my peers and mentors. And you should definitely use those communal resources that you have at your disposal to communicate to the proposal review board the best take and why the science is both interesting and achievable.
I will say that the PRB is savvy enough that if someone checks all 6 boxes, because it probably looks better to say I'm going to use every facet of the Foundry, like they're smart enough to know that there's only so much you can do in 1 year. And if you check those boxes for support facilities, you should really have a plan for exactly why you need them and how that really interacts with your proposal, not just, well, I'll check theory and say, well, of course someone will do DFT of my structure once I figure out what it is. And, of course, I'll be able to just go down and do some atomic resolution STM because it's fun, at the same time. So when you do select support facilities, again, the specificity, is important for that kind of thing too.
If you do want access to a lot of things and you just want to make sure that you're getting all of those things in, don't put it in the proposal. Make your proposal focused on like the core part. And when you're here as a user, one of the things like we are not super restrictive of like, you cannot use this tool because it wasn't in your proposal. It's really a discussion of scope that can happen while you're here as a user to say, oh, I realize I need to understand this part of my sample that I didn't realize at the beginning. I would like to talk to somebody who's an AFM expert and see if we can use that tool to expand the scope a little bit of our project. And that type of discussion and change of scope is allowed, and it's kind of the right way to go rather than saying I want access to everything under the Foundry's roof.
The main reason that proposals often get rejected is that the scope of the work is not clear. And so you have to be really clear about what you're going to do. And I know there's this natural tendency to say, I'm going to do everything, right? And so a lot of first-time users will write a proposal that has way too much in there.
Definitely keep the 1 year proposal timeline in mind. So I think a very frequent reason that proposals get rejected by our PRB is someone is asking to look at 17 aliquots of 5 different sample preparation processes to characterize sizes of nanoparticles, and it's going to take they would need to be on the microscope every 3rd day for the entire year to make this happen. There's just not simply that much time. So I think understanding the the amount of resources and being clear about the amount of resources that you're looking for is very helpful.
And then the final thing I can say is everything in the kitchen sink proposals don't tend to fare well, because we really do have one of everything. And if you propose to use one of everything, then that kind of tells us that you haven't actually drilled your research agenda down to the point that within a 12-month time frame, you'll be able to get measurements done on one of everything. So think strategically. If you actually do have a research program that requires the use of one of everything, just break it up into manageable sub-proposals and stage it out over a few cycles of submission.
Also, if one of my proposal last year did not get accepted, but what I got was a very good feedback. And one of the point other panelist was mentioning the scope. The proposal was, got a good review, but it said the scope is too much. It's not feasible in 1 year. So that made me realize that I should, think about it. And then we cut down on the scope and listen to all the other feedback. And the same proposal got accepted this time in the organic facility. So I think the take-home message is that please consult the staff, and and it will help you refine your idea. And if you don't get accepted, don't give up. Look at the feedback and apply again.
So I wanted to also mention that attending the user meeting is really useful. I know that's like kind of far off from now, but I know that for me personally, that's like the place where I met a lot of the people who ended up being able to help me through the proposal writing process. Like I didn't actually end up, it wasn't kind of a formal thing where I like wrote a proposal and sent it to a staff member and they like gave me specific comments. It was kind of more of like an organic ongoing conversation we were having that I think allowed me to write a good proposal when the time came.